Guy Penrod and Wes Hampton's true story? A journey through grace and silence in the world of gospel music? Few names ring as familiar and comforting as Guy Penrod and Wes Hampton. For decades, their powerful voices not only inspired millions with deeply spiritual harmonies, but also formed a brotherhood that fans came to cherish. Together in the Gaither vocal band, they created music that lifted the broken, comforted the grieving, and united generations of believers in worship. Their time on stage produced unforgettable moments. But even the most beautiful harmonies can eventually fall silent. Over time, subtle changes began to emerge. They no longer performed together. No new photos surfaced, and fans noticed a lack of joint appearances. At first, many assumed it was just a brief break. But as months passed with no signs of reunion, questions arose. Whispers circulated. Had they fallen out? Were they in conflict? Or had life simply taken them in separate directions? What no one could see at the time was that both men were privately battling deeply personal storms, not with each other, but within themselves. For Guy Penrod, the struggle was both emotional and physical. A sudden health scare forced him to step away from the stage. The very voice that had propelled his music ministry was now at risk. Doctors warned him of vocal strain, and he was completely worn out. This wasn't about preserving an image. It was about survival. Guy made the difficult decision to withdraw from the spotlight, to rest and recover. Yet as the noise faded, something unexpected emerged: years of built-up exhaustion. Later he would reflect, "I was singing louder than I was listening to." God. He had been pouring out without pausing to refill his soul. Meanwhile, Wes Hampton faced a different kind of storm, one born not of illness, but of misunderstanding. An old private message thread shared out of context resurfaced online. Though the messages were innocent and filled with guidance for young Christian musicians, some within the gospel community reacted harshly. Wes found himself unfairly accused of compromising his beliefs, but instead of rushing to defend himself, Wes chose a path of quiet reflection. "Sometimes silence is the only answer love can give," he said softly. Rather than retaliate, he stepped back and leaned into prayer and grace. During this time, the once inseparable pair grew distant, not out of anger or conflict, but from the quiet weight of their individual battles. Guy was on a journey of physical and spiritual healing, while Wes was navigating the pain of misjudgment. Neither reached out. The silence between them grew, and fans noticed. Behind the stillness, there was no feud, only two brothers in faith, each lost in their own wilderness, unsure of how to find the other again. Then, unexpectedly, everything changed. Both men were separately invited to a private men's retreat in the Highlands, unaware that the other would be attending. It wasn't planned for reconciliation or publicity. On the second night of worship, as voices filled the room with the timeless hymn, "Great is Thy Faithfulness," Guy glanced up and saw Wes singing, tears streaming down his face. Without hesitation, he walked over, placed a hand on Wes's shoulder, and whispered, "I miss my brother." Wes, holding back emotion, simply replied, "I never stopped being one. No press, no photos. Just two broken hearts praying, forgiving, and beginning to heal in silence, the way true brotherhood often does." Today, both Guy and Wes have returned to ministry, though not in the spotlight they once shared. Guy has re-entered music in a quieter way, releasing a deeply personal EP titled "Quiet Strength" and focusing more on his family. Wes, too, has returned, mentoring young worship leaders and offering support to those often overlooked by the church. They don't often share the stage anymore, and maybe they don't need to, because true reconciliation doesn't always require a public performance. Sometimes the greatest healing happens behind the scenes. Their story is not one of scandal, rivalry, or betrayal. It is about humanity. It's a reminder that even the most faithful leaders, those who guide others in worship, are still human. They can be worn down, misjudged, misunderstood, and broken. But by God's grace, they can also be restored. Guy and Wes never allowed the silence to become a wedge of bitterness. Instead, they allowed Christ to shape them in their pain. They walked away from pressure, not from each other. And when the smoke cleared, they were still standing changed, quieter perhaps, but whole. What really happened between Wes Hampton and Guy Penrod? Life happened. Life with all its strain and misunderstanding, but grace happened too, and so did restoration. They chose not to let gossip define their journey. They chose to honor one another, even in absence. Their years with the Gaither vocal band had already sealed their legacy in gospel music. Guy's striking long hair and resonant baritone made him an icon in Southern gospel. Wes followed with his smooth tenor and uplifting presence, complementing Guy perfectly. Offstage, they prayed together, led Bible studies, and supported each other through thick and thin. For more than a decade, their bond felt unshakable, which is why the silence felt so loud. At first, fans chalked up the absence to schedule changes. But soon, the lack of joint appearances, no collaborative projects, and no shared messages sparked concern. People asked, "Is Guy okay? Where is Wes?" But no public explanations followed. The gospel world, which thrives on community and transparency, felt the stillness like a wound. Some speculated about behind-the-scenes conflict. Others whispered about personal trials. Those close to the pair, however, knew the truth. It was deeper than drama. It was two men of God carrying burdens they never saw coming. For Guy, the breaking point came after a grueling tour schedule. One night during rehearsal, he couldn't catch his breath and had to sit mid-song. Alarmed, his team took him to a doctor. The verdict: vocal strain and overwhelming fatigue. Guy canceled all upcoming commitments and retreated to rest. In solitude, he confronted not only his physical limits, but also emotional ones. "I was singing louder than I was listening," he later confessed. The stillness became sacred ground for reflection and healing. Wes, on the other hand, was bruised by an online misunderstanding. Years earlier, he had encouraged young artists, some of whom later moved into secular music. Someone twisted that private guidance and posted it out of context. Critics accused him of blurring ministry lines. Although there was no wrongdoing, the backlash was swift and hurtful. Rather than fight back, Wes went silent. "My heart has always been for the next generation," he quietly shared. "I'll keep serving in silence." Their distance from each other wasn't about anger. It was about survival. Each man bore his own grief, unsure how to reach for the other without making it heavier. "They weren't mad," said a mutual friend. "They were just too broken to speak." Then came the retreat. On neutral ground, free from cameras and audiences, healing found its way in. No words were necessary. Just the hymn, just the tears, and just the quiet grip of a shoulder brothers, united in spirit. Today they walk separate paths, but not apart in heart. Guy's return to music is calm and reflective. Wes continues to minister to others with quiet dignity. No tours, no reunion albums, at least not yet. But their story already has its victory. Not in harmonies, but in healing. Not in applause, but in grace. This isn't a tale of controversy, it's a testimony. A witness to the fact that even worship leaders can grow weary, can feel isolated, and yet find their way back, not just to the stage, but to one another. In the end, Guy and Wes bowed under the pressure, under the silence, under the weight of expectations, but they never bowed out of brotherhood. The spotlight faded, but the connection endured. Because the greatest part of their story isn't what was lost, it's what was quietly restored.